So, as everybody probably knows, or should know, the Booker Prize is the world's most prestigious prize for literature written in English. And originally, it was UK and the Commonwealth. And then about 20 years ago, they let the Americans in, which didn't spoil things too much. Some Americans have won, but, they are triple the population of the Commonwealth. So there you go. So that was 1968, and many of our favourite novels have won or been shortlisted for the Booker. And then in 1990, we started our involvement. Now, what that means is Designer Bookbinders is a society, a small UK-based society, founded in the 50s, and we exist solely to promote contemporary artistic bookbinding and to uphold standards of excellence in our craft, both technical excellence and artistic and design. Now, when you become a fellow of the society, so you're elected by your peers, and it's quite hard to become a fellow, your work has to be really good. But one of the benefits of becoming a fellow is you get a chance to do the Booker, which means, given the number of fellows, 25 or 28 of them, whatever they are, it means some don't like to do it because they don't like the pressure of the time limit. Some people are sort of retired. You don't do it when you've just become a fellow. So this narrows the pool of fellows to the point where you probably do it every 2 years or every 3 years. I think it goes 2-2-3, 2-2-3. It's very neatly worked out. So there are six shortlisted books, and 6 of us, and we are matched up. And Angela James, who organises it and has done from the start, puts a lot of thought into matching that bookbinder with that author, because she knows us and she knows what she likes. Anyway, the long list, I think, is published in July. And I love the fact that it's 13 books, because it's a Booker's dozen. So little pun. And what you're encouraged to do by Angela is, first of all, she's told you that you will be doing it this year. If you did it last year, you'll not be doing it this year. That's for sure. Look at the long list of 13. You don't have to read them. You just need to read the blurb or reviews. And if any of them grab you, put your name next to them. I was in Oakland, California, which is where I live in the summer. And I'm not in Cheshire, because we go there to teach bookbinding for the summer. So there I am. I'm actually in Berkeley, I think. And I'm in the bookshop and I'm looking at the long listed books that they have on their shelves, the ones that they've got, some aren't published yet in America. And what's striking about this long list is there are 2 books that are record breakers. And one is Night Crawling by Lila Motley, who lives probably 3 miles away from me in Oakland, California. And it's a great book, which she actually wrote when she was 17, and it was published when she was 19. So youngest author ever. And Treacle Walker by Alan Garner, 87, oldest author ever. And also, I think, shortest book by words. There is a shorter book by pages, but his is shorter by words. And so obviously I decided I had to have both of those. Never heard of Lila Motley, obviously. Had heard of Alan Garner, thought he was dead. There's been so long, we all read the weird stone of what I thought was called Brides and Garment, shows what I knew, when I was 13. Then I read The Moon of Gomrath, and then I think I read The Owl Service, and that was it. I move on to more grown-up things. So I thought. This is before I realised that Alan doesn't write children's books. He writes books that children understand better than adults, which I think is lovely. So I got very excited, put my name next to both of them. She obviously didn't get through, and he did. So read the book. Didn't understand it at first, and I think that's the point about good books. How awful would it be if it was just presented to you, like that? So you've got work to do. You have to read the book multiple times. I've read it 24 times, and there's a reason, 25 now. There's a reason why I read it 24 times, which I'll get to. So I read it, and I had absolutely no intention of meeting Alan. It's not important to meet your author. You don't. I don't know anyone who's ever met their author. It was the fact that this house this real house that's so famous in the Garner world and so moving just to sit in this room, was 10 miles away from where I live in Cheshire. So I thought, well, it's sort of semi-open to the public. I'll see if I can get a phone number. Found the Blackton Trust, found a phone number. Griselda answered it. And she said, of course, you must come and see the house, and we'd like to meet you. She said, I have to tell you, though. So we arranged a meeting for this is in mid-September, lovely weather. And she said, I have to tell you, though, you might not meet Alan because he's exhausted from all the interviews. He's shent, which even though I'm from Cheshire, I didn't know that was a Cheshire word, but it's a great word. He was knackered as he said, from the stupid questions. Do you write with a pen or a pencil? Do you use a computer? Where do you get your ideas from? I mean, it must be awful. And so, some good interviews. When we came, we didn't meet Alan. Griselda took us into the stack, which is right under there, the chimney room. And she said, now, Michael, you sit there. That's where Treacle Walker sits. And Dominic, you sit there. That's where Joseph sits. And, we're both welling up because we both read the book now. I've read it 2 or 3 times at this point. And she just tells us, she gives us a tour and tells us about the house. Not really the story of the moving of the house, because we learn that later, but the story of how Joseph comes to inhabit this house and how important Treacle Walker is. He's a rag and bone man. He's also possibly a gypsy. He's certainly a magician. And I don't understand the story fully, but we come up to this room, which is where Joseph sleeps. And Griselda said, have you got anything? And I said, yes, I have the design. It's ready. It's done. It's just a little out of focus. And that, I think we both shivered a bit because, of course, Joe's got this eye that's out of focus and he has to take it off to see the world as it is rather than the world as he sees it. And so the way I described the design to Griselda is, it's like I take a snapshot in my head and then I have to go home and do the work. And the work usually takes about a week. With the booker, I should say, they send you 2 copies of the book in sheets. We hope that you can just start sewing. So you've got to read one while you bind it. And of course, I was glad to get this book selfishly because it's also short. I definitely didn't want Wolf Hall or Bring Up the Bodies because I love Hilary Mantel too much to try and do justice to those books. So as Alan's, I take the approach now in my life as Alan's grandfather did, which is if another bugger can do it, let him. So if somebody else can do a binding on a book that big in 5 weeks, fine. But I'm a short book person. So what comes out of this is this, right? This is the pack, as I call it, the package. The snapshot was basically the house. So I knew that the design was going to be the house, not represented literally because we're doing poetry here, we're not doing prose. So it's going to be something that is evocative of the shapes and shades of the house. And so it says house, but it doesn't necessarily, it says, house with timbers. So that's the design. And then usually I have a quote. This is how Sondheim works, in Sondheim, who I adore, says every musical he writes has a catch. In Anyone Can Whistle, it was the word, what was the word in Anyone Can Whistle? Stay with me or something. So I read this book and I knew it was going to be on the cover. When Treacle Walker says, he says, bugger off then, Treacle Walker. And he says that he comes from the country of summer stars. That is so moving because you don't have to be a kid to understand what that means, because when you're little, the stars are your magic, that are available to everyone, especially if you live here in where we have nice dark skies. So why don't we put the title of the book? Because in design binding, which is the field we're in, the title never appears on the cover of the book. It doesn't need to, it's on the box. If it is going to appear on the cover, favourite phrase of mine, it has to argue its way on. It has to justify itself being there. Well, here, we've got the house, And I thought I would write the words Treacle Walker at the top with my secret weapon. And my secret weapon is glow-in-the-dark foil. And I knew, or I guessed, that if that had been around when Alan was 10, because Alan is, of course, Joe, I think, he would have loved it. So I did that. I'm going to show you the pattern board now. So there's the house. Here's me trying out the tooling. But I asked I thought, wouldn't it be good to get the words Treacle Walker written by a 10-year-old kid? And as it happens, my little cousin, whose name is Joseph, is 10 and he lives in Cheshire. I hadn't made that connection before. So I pick him up from school twice a week, and one day I said to him, I'm working on this book. Could you write down the words Treacle Walker for me in your handwriting? Because I can't write like a 10-year-old. So he wrote it, that's me, and then he practiced it, and I asked him to do it again and again, and then we got a good one. And then he said to me, I didn't write it using my handwriting. I used it, I wrote it how I thought a 10-year-old boy might have written it in the old days. Which, I mean, where he gets ideas like this, I have no idea. But he did the old-fashioned K that looks like an R. He knew enough to do that. So he wrote that, and I was off. So once I've got the words, I can start plotting the designs. You can hardly see it, but that says Treacle Walker, and that's Treacle Walker again, but with the extra dots. So the dots that spell out the words Treacle Walker were done in glow in the dark, but then I obscured that, because I don't want to make anything too obvious, by adding extra dots surrounding the glow in the dark, just done with an ordinary silver. So that when you look at the book, if you look at this brown strip here, this is my practice piece, that's what you see. That's just some summer stars. There's no indication that there are letter forms there, unless you probably know this with glow in the dark. You really have to charge them. You can't just turn off the light. You have to be in a dark room. You have to put big spotlights on them for about 5 minutes. Then you turn off the light and they glow for about 2 minutes. It's very temporary. It's very passing. So that's that. I had a piece of leather that was neither pink nor orange, because I think the plaster is neither pink nor orange, and then brown is brown. So I was experimenting here with textures, and this is what I did. I have these tools, and these are just dots that I used to, I'm going to show you the book in a second, to tool into the leather that makes the plaster work. And then I have this special tool, which is a tool made 70 years ago by a famous bookbinder in our world called Roger Powell. And I have, through some strange circumstances, have sort of become custodian of his important collection. And that is what's used to create the wood grain. Now, I'm going to show you the book, because enough faffing around. I think we're done with that. I might refer back to this if I need to. All books, all special bindings like this are put into a slipcase for protection. The theory being, if that gets damaged, most bookbinders could make you one, in 50 years from now. Here's the clamshell box. So what's going on here? Well, there's the quatrefoil thing, the sort of logo of the house, which is at the gable end, I think. So I created that and sunk that in, as if to say, this is the title page to my project. If you've been here, you'll know that when they cleared the field to rebuild, to put up this house, they were left with a pile of stones, and the architect or the builder said, why don't we make a labyrinth? And it looks like you've got enough stones left over that are different to make an Orion's belt. So there's Orion's belt, also glow in the dark, of course. And then this title, this is almost one of the most exciting things about this book, and it's not even the book. Ragbone, any rags, pots for rags, donkey stone. Take those letters, add in the exclamation marks, and you get the number 48. And why did I count them? Because I thought, I was curious, about those words because, of course, they begin the book and they end the book when Joseph becomes Treacle Walker and commands the horse. It's so beautiful. And anyway, I added up the letters and it's 48. Where's the middle? Ragbone, ragbone, any rags? 24. Pots of rags, donkey stone, 24. So when we came here the second time to have the meeting with Alan, we had lunch, I think, and we sat down, we got to work, and I said, did you know that ragbone, ragbone, any rags, pots, rags, donkey stone is 48 letters with a break in the middle? And he said, I was just getting to know the Alan Garner style, he said, well, of course I know that, because I wrote the bloody thing. Okay, so that's me told. I said, did you know that Treacle Walker dot Alan Garner is also 24? And he said, no, I didn't. You can have that one, or words to that effect. So I felt good that I discovered that. I mean, I had to add a dot, but that's just the page break between the title and the author, right? So that was good. One other thing that we noticed is, so the word 24, you look it up, it's a magic number, but so are all numbers. This is why I read the book 24 times. I mean, because I just had to keep rereading the book. And the great thing about the book is you can read it in the bath. One time I read it just hopping out of the shower. Up here, we met Alfred. Now, Alfred, who is now working as an archaeologist, he was doing his PhD in Exeter and he was doing some volunteer work here. And we met him one day and he said, we've been studying these notches. And I don't know if they'd gone unnoticed by Alan and Griselda and their children, whether they did, but he was just doing a further study. And they're in this mantelpiece here. And they're like that. There's a sharp angle and a shallow angle. And they're done with a little knife. So they're little V shapes. And so there's two cuts. And they're called intentional marks or stopped cuts, something like that. And I said, how many are there? And he said, well, it's a bit difficult to distinguish marks from nicks, but I think there are about 12. In other words, there are 24 cuts. So I am getting, I cry very easily, but I think I burst into tears at that point because I couldn't believe that this was happening. The 24 here again. And so I knew I had to put them on. So right, here's the book. The box is lined with suede for protection, okay? These are lovely boxes, take about 2 days to make. And here's the book. I'll get rid of this now. There it is. So that is a simplified, almost like a cartoon version of this house. It's orange, or is it pink? Plaster, wooden beams. The plaster is dimpled, which I've done with my 3 little round tools. The beams are done with my little wood grain tool that Roger Powell made in about 1955 and is now mine. Up top here are the 12 notches in the mantelpiece. And there, of course, are the words Treacle Walker with the glow-in-the-dark actual letters added to with the silver. When we came and presented the book to Alan, now obviously Alan, he's an old man, he's COVID cautious, he's not going to London. And he's done in by these interviews, right? Griselda was very worried about him because he was so tired. Anyway, he liked small groups, so Mike and I came, we had, I think, tea this time to present the book. And he seemed to like it. I think he cries easily too. I think we're all sensitive souls. And it's, since I think I'm the only Booker binder to meet their author before doing the book, I might also be the only one to have actually physically presented it before the ceremony. And I wouldn't be allowed to if he was going to the ceremony, because you get given it at the ceremony, at the dinner. But because he wasn't going, I felt it was legitimate to come and give it to him. And when he said, what's this? And I explained what it is. I hadn't got to the inside yet. And I said, those letters, that title, Alan, Treacle Walker, was done by my cousin, who was a 10-year-old boy from Cheshire called Joe. And Alan went like this, stop, it's too much. And it was. Because, what are the chances I've got a 10-year-old cousin from Cheshire called Joe? Anyway, because they go through the mirror, God, 9, 10 times, I don't know. They go through the mirror. The comic book characters go through the mirror, which I guess would be over there. And then he puts his hand through and he goes through. And they keep going through the mirror. So the world is right way, wrong way, right way, wrong way. All of children's mythology and folklore is happening here. Everything is an influence, isn't it? So here's the mirror. So this is leather. This is called a doubleur. It just means like a lining. And this flyleaf, which is the first and last moving page of any book, on these books, you tend to use suede. So any mark you make in this leather gets offset into the suede and becomes mirrored. So I've invented a new typeface. It's called Treacle Walker. And here you can see it says backwards, rag bone, any rags, pots for rags, donkey stone. The edge, people will be familiar with gilded edges on books, but this is an artwork, so we tend to use paint and do something decorative. And I've never done this before. So this is the bog, the Alder bog. And I put the paint on. Just before it dried, I got a little tool and very quickly, with no planning, scraped some of the paint away. So that right there on the edge is something, but you don't know what it is until you read. That's thin Amran, bolted down by Joseph. In conclusion, the dinner happened, and it was Alan's 88th birthday, and of course they sang happy birthday to him, which I now know him well enough to know that he would hate. Anyway, I look through the guest list and I see if there are people that I want to go up and thank for their work, because I think it's terribly important. Writers live a lonely life, and I don't think good writers would never get tired of people saying, thank you for your work. So I saw Damon Galgut, who'd won the year before. His book is astonishing, of course. And I was chatting to him, and he said, so I explained that I was one of the bookbinders, and I showed him my book in the end. And I said, what was it like? I said, because, there's no way he's going to be here, and he's tired, and he's been done in by all this press. And what was it like for you after you won compared to before you won? And he said, oh, it was about 100 times worse. You lose your year. Well, Alan's not going to go do a pan-European tour, but it'd still be lots of Zooming and because you've got to keep your publishers happy, right? So I think it would be very hard to say, no, I'm going to continue to be a hermit and just not talk to the press. So Griselda had already said to me that she was very afraid of him winning because it would not be the right thing to happen to him. And then I now start to understand this after I speak to Damien Galgut. And literally, as he walked away after our 2 minutes together, he said prophetic words. He said, just pray that your guy doesn't win, because it'll kill him. So we had a grand old night. And then I think 2 days later, I unusually took the book away. Normally it goes on exhibition, and brought it back here. And we had yet another lunch. And he saw the book again, and I explained it's about it. But it was really just a reunion and an official handing over. I feel very attached to this book. And then, of course, I said, this is the end. I said to Alan, I think I know you well enough now, this is our 5th meeting, to say that I'm glad that you didn't win. And he said, oh, I did win. Because this is the prize. He said the right thing.